Needless trade coming out of SKT. I think that benefits Misfits a little bit more. Trade coming out by Ignar and Hansama super early on. And it looks like SKT actually got the better end of that. So Misfits actually hurting themselves a little bit. SKT walk up a little bit too much. That's a huge fucking mistake. And that Fervor that is on Ignar is doing so much damage. They end up turning that fight. That is such a huge turning point for Misfits because it actually SK Telecom got the better end of some of those trades, but then they actually just took it a little bit too far and they messed up mechanically at the moment that they could not afford to mess up mechanically. You can see that they have the double Fervor down in bottom lane, Misfits does, and so what ends up happening is inside of the extended trade they have this damage amplification that Wolf and Bane can't really match or account for. Interesting thing here as well is that also Wolf is running the exhaust and Bane running the heal rather than the heal on Lulu and the barrier on Bane and like the cleanse on Bane or something like that. And so what ends up happening is inside of that extended trade, because they're on the other side of the minions are actually helping out Ignar and Hansama as well, and they turn that. If Ignar and Hansama lost that 2v2 just now, or if Bang and Wolf had just played the lane out a little bit more casually, the game is so rough for Misfits. It becomes so ridiculously difficult for Maxlor to try to salvage and recover that bottom lane. So really fortunate for them. Maxlor even ending up he manages to actually sneak against Blank. Actually, I'm gonna rewatch the sneak, see how that happened. Faker cancels it, but the thing that's interesting about Faker canceling this is yes, he cancels Maxlor from the channel. But the problem is that they can't actually continue the extended fight. Huni has priority up in top lane, but Blank is at such a low HP value that just Power of Evil with that heal available on him and Maxlor being level 1, it actually lets them just contest the red. So really bizarre play here by Faker because there's no universe that he can actually ever kill Maxlor. Obviously all he wants to do is prevent Maxlor from getting the red, but this is all that's going to happen is he just delays the inevitable. And so that's probably actually an instance of Faker having a little bit of a brain fart because no matter what, the same outcome is achieved. The only difference is that now you trade flash for flash. And the only argument that could be made possibly there is if Faker's entertaining that he is willing to play flashless in mid lane against Power of Evil, who's also going to be flashless. And he wants to take away the flash from Maxlor because Maxlor having flash is actually really big for bottom lane, who's already behind. And then obviously it's really big for Alphari up in top lane. Yeah, and you can see this is actually just misplayed by Wolf and Bang. Look at all these minions that are helping them out, and then, you know, remember the double Fervor. And then Wolf actually turns. I don't know if Flash Auto with picks kills Hansama. Maybe it does. No, actually it probably doesn't. We can't actually see the HP value. I don't know if Flash Auto from Wolf actually kills Hansama, but he seemed to be valuing more the ability to, you know, protect his ADC. And one of the reasons for this is because if Bang ends up dying and for some reason Ignar would get level 2 or something like that, then stuff gets really ugly. Although it looks like actually Ignar was actually just going to be way too low of HP because look at all these minions damaging him. Maybe this isn't accounted for. This is a very high tension 2v2. It actually did just look like a flash auto from Wolf would have killed, but maybe he was thinking that it wouldn't be first blood. The other thing about this is he would have been out of minion range of a lot of these red minions, and then if he comes back down, maybe actually Wolf picks up you know, the kill onto Ignar. And then we can also see that Wolf even seemed to have E. Could have kept chasing him and then maybe made Hansama flash. But then Bang ends up going down. It's all really strange. Very interestingly played 2v2. Bang and Wolf were obviously not... They were underestimating the amount of damage, and this is a really good spot for Misfits, and they're continuing to accelerate ahead. And bottom lane falling behind constantly is something that SKT cannot afford to have happen. You know, Inven's going to be on Bang about this again. All of his solo queue accounts are being searched up right now. They're wondering how many games of solo queue he's playing. They're going to flame him, and it looks like Ignar is going ham. Now, the 1-for-1 here is huge. It is so big. Kill onto Blank does nothing. He's already set behind. Blank getting kills does absolutely nothing because there's no items that he can actually get that has an impact on the laning phases at this stage of the game. If he gets like Cinder Hulk, if he gets boots or something, tier 2 boots, none of that matters. However, continuing to put Bang 6 feet under is super big for Misfits. You can see the Faker's down here now, and it looks like actually they're going to pick up some kills. And Faker ends up picking up 1 kill, and Blank got another kill. A little bit unfortunate. Obviously, would have wanted both kills onto Faker. And interesting right here. So when Faker already arrives down into bottom lane, you already know that because of the size of this minion wave, you need to crash this into the turret before Hans Sama and Ignar would be able to get to the lane. But obviously, Ignar is going to be able to get to the lane, and Power Reveal is on the way. So what you want to do here is, if you're SKT, watch how Bang actually moves into mid lane. This is done intentionally because Faker is going to recall after this, and he's going to go into the Lost Chapter. He's going to buy whatever item he wants to do. So basically, if Bang just runs down here into the lane, what's going to happen is this wave is already crashed in, and then this wave is waiting to bounce back into Bang, and so Bang is basically just sitting here doing nothing, dancing back and forth. This is the thing that actually occurs a lot inside of solo queue, and AD carries don't actually realize that they should just look at the map and go do something else. Now, let's say that there was no minion wave that was actually available to be eaten. If you're an ADC that can do golems, then you should do golems. If you're an ADC that maybe has AoE or some sort of ability to actually do wraiths, you should probably actually go up and just do wraiths. That's if there's no mid lane. Let's skip ahead. And now Faker's saying report bottom. Bang and Wolf managed to live, but it's by the skin of their teeth. And now the thing that's going on right now is that Hans Sama and Ignar are approaching 6, and you can see the pressure that it's putting on Faker. He's having to constantly try to, go into the fog of war, establish some sort of vision control. He's trying to threaten pressure onto Hans Sama and Ignar. And even if Faker doesn't go bottom, if he's in the fog of war, Ignar and Hans Sama have to respect it unless they have proper ward coverage, and so it makes it so that they're incapable of playing as aggressive and as far up as they normally would like to, especially if they entertain the Weaver's Wall. And so what Faker's trying to do is he's just trying to do like a pressure gank. He doesn't actually intend to go down to bottom. Hans Sama and Ignar actually get the turret at 8 minutes. This is a little bit interesting to me. There could be an argument that could be made that would be Hans Sama and Ignar actually letting the turret stay up a little bit longer. But I think that what they're trying to do is they know that Rift Herald is going to be coming up in a few minutes, and what they want to do now is they just want to get that turret out of the way. And one thing that they could look to do is, because they know that Bang and Wolf don't have the ability to contest anything, and it looks like Power of Evil actually has a pretty neutral mid lane going on, they could just go with Max Lord to get the Mountain Drake, and that would give enough time for bottom lane to be shoved back in, and then that would actually synergize for their handoff with Alphari, letting Alphari recall and move down into bottom because it's too early in the game. Obviously, Power Evil is going to pick up that blue buff, and he's going to be completely stationary in mid lane. And then what you end up doing is you have Alphari run down into bottom lane, you pick up the wave, push one more wave, run into mid, while Power of Evil is holding mid lane neutral. And then you have him unite with Power of Evil as Maxlor moves onto the left-hand side of the map, while Ignar and Hans Sama are on the top-hand side. At this point, Rift Herald is not too far out, and you have all 5 members on this side of the map, while Huni is still down, struggling in bottom without any value, because there's no dragon. He's not actually going to be able to get the turret. There's no objectives on the right-hand side of the map. The entire right-hand side jungle is gone. And so what this ends up doing is it enables Alphari to actually conserve his teleport by being on the left-hand side of the map. So they can actually make a proactive play against SKT somewhere within these four points, right? They can try to attack mid-tier 1, and they can try to, more than likely, try to attack top-tier 1. And all the while doing so, they can then try to collapse backwards into Rift Herald while having control over this, which is super huge for a blue buff Orianna, Cataclysm, or I think that's called Cataclysm on Jarvan's ultimate. And then they can look to capture Rift Herald. If they get Rift Herald and then they reset, bottom lane is in a beautiful spot for them, top lane's in a really beautiful spot for them, and then they have Herald at their beck and call. What this ends up doing is that when you assume the speed at which the next dragon would end up resurrecting, they would have priority over the lands, and they would be they would probably be timing their recalls about a minute out of the next dragon. So they're going to have priority in all of the lanes. This is a macro play SKT cannot respond to. This is a forced play that SKT have to do their best to resist. There's no way for SKT to do anything to this. This is like one of those things that I talk about, and I can't seem to find an alternative. This is like an optimal play. When I'm considering all the different types of outcomes that SKT can do, all the ways that the champions can move, and what they can do without it obviously being horrendous for them, I think that what ends up occurring is that Misfits have a proactive rotation that's very chess-like in its nature, and I don't think that it really has fault. That doesn't end up netting them either a neutral or a positive. In most cases, or in the majority of cases, it's always going to be a positive, and it's either going to always be a neutral or a negative for SKT, but I think that it's out of their control. Their job right now is to try to stabilize, juggle the aggro, and then try to outplay them on a mechanical level, which is why this game is a little bit different from chess. So I think that's what they should do. We'll see what they do end up doing. Instead, it looks like the bottom lane is recalling. They are neglecting getting the Mountain Drake. Alphari was way too healthy to be dove. He definitely could have outplayed that with his ultimate EQ, Flash being available. Don't like how they rotated up Hansama and Ignar, and the reason that I don't like that they rotated it up is because you can see that Hansama and Ignar, they could have actually delayed their recall a little bit more had they prioritized getting the Mountain Drake, and this would have actually extended the duration of the blue buff for Power of Evil in mid lane once Maxlor hands it off to him. And then because Maxlor actually needs a recall after that, it enables Maxlor, bottom lane, etc. to all path to the same side of the map while Alphari goes down into bottom. Power of Evil has priority in mid, and then Alphari actually gets, again, advantage over Huni, priority in bottom, eating 2 waves, and then he can run up to mid lane and steal the teleport away from Huni because Huni has to respond because he's on the back foot. So Huni devotes his teleport, Alphari and team back off, they get the Herald, Alphari goes down to bottom, teleport advantage for Misfits, which really, really hurts Faker and his Weaver's Wall. Mike is not muted. Mike's not muted. I just replugged it back in. Okay. So I think that Misfits dropped the ball. You can see that they're ultimately achieving the same exact rotation, but there's some errors in it. It is definitely suboptimal. And because of that, SKT actually gets some breathing room that they should otherwise not have. You can see that Alphari is actually, he's arrived at bottom lane too early. And so he's in this like little bit of a contest war, and then the speed at which he shoves the wave is actually also too early because it gives SK Telecom priority. Or it gives them option, not priority. It gives them option in bottom lane. So errors by Misfits on a macro level. They had a check available to them. They opted out of it. And you can see really good star sense by Misfits. They were able to sniff Huni out. And this now propels them right back into the lead, so it doesn't even matter about the loss of tempo and control that they just had, and Maxlor ends up dying, but that's okay because the pressure up in top lane, a little bit too much, Huni teleporting in, don't think that you're ever really going to be able to get any damage, or, you know, not going to be able to kill Ignar, not going to be able to kill Hansama, not really going to be able to threaten anything to them. Really, really, really good by Ignar to do that, to sniff that out. Such a good fucking play. And Huni just being way too far up, and you can see that it was mostly because the lane was already in a really ugly spot, and so SK Telecom's lane assignments are really poor. And even though Misfits, they're not doing perfect lane assignments, they're still, you know, they're doing better lane assignments than SKT, so SKT making a ton of fucking blunders, and I think that they're really disrespecting Misfits on a gameplay level. And that's, you know, leading into a lot of these choices that we've seen in games number 2, game number 3. Didn't really see in game number 1, but that, you know, game number 1, I've heard that it was a super big stomp, and so maybe that can actually play into it from a mental aspect as to why SKT is playing so aggressive, so forward, so disrespectfully in a lot of these spots. And Ignar, he's being a god in this series. He's like actually almost 1v9ing. They get the red buff, and this ties in. And so one of the things about Ivern is that his tempo control actually ties in with exactly what Misfits need, because he's able to give his laners the buff while retaining it for himself. And this is super big because it means that Hansama gets a red buff much earlier than he normally should. We can see the Mountain Drake still hasn't gone down. A little bit surprised by that, especially because SK Telecom are basically only relying on Talia for wave clear, and similarly to sorry, Victor, you do want to get Mountain Drake so that you can penetrate his ability to wave clear consistently. That much easier. You want to try to get as many dragons out as you can. The only argument here for delaying dragons or something would be like if you wait until 23 minutes or something, 24 minutes, you eat the first dragon, second dragon spawns, you kill that immediately, and then it forces the Elder. That's something that you could do if you're really, really, really far ahead at like the 22, 23 minute mark. That way you can get one Baron, and then you can look to pincer them between another Baron and an Elder Dragon, as it would be forced to spawn at the 35 minute mark. So Misfits out-rotating, outplaying SKT. Still really slow. Alphari shouldn't be top lane right now. There's no reason to defend the top tier 1 turret. It's just a pawn. There's basically no value. He should just be elsewhere on the map, threatening his ultimate, making SK Telecom play a little bit more defensively. It opens up the room for Misfits, and then you let top tier 1 turret die, and that way you have a better lane that you're able to have option in that can actually constrict SK Telecom, and you can create a dead lane, which will really, really hurt them right now because they have 3 carries that actually need gold. You can make an argument for Faker being an off carry right now because he is on that Talia, has a lot of nice base damage, benefits a lot from low econ, but still the Jace and the Vayne are going to need gold, and if you can basically just say, okay, neither of us are going to have top lane available to us, then that's something they should definitely have looked to take. The other argument for that is that they have the Rift Herald available to them, so if they let top tier 1 die and Alphari is elsewhere on the map, he threatens something onto Faker or something with Power of Evil, they shove Faker in, they rotate down to 5 as a unit, and then you can look to try to attack Huni and, you know, force him to maybe either not take the turret or arrive late to bottom, in which case you can actually look to make use of the Rift Herald there. One of the arguments would actually, though, be, I can see an argument for this, is actually conserving the Rift Herald to penetrate the mid tier 1 turret, because that turret is integral to SK Telecom being able to hold on and try to stabilize the game. Really, really important for Xerath, Victor, Talia. Ziggs is another champion that, you know, it's super, super important for them to maintain it, because what it enables them to do is, for the second dragon and the upcoming Barons, it enables them a really good location to have a constant zone of control over, that they can safely look to get wards in on the side brushes, and they can know exactly how they can move into the side lanes of the map. And so really, really important for Misfits to try to raise that turret, and that's an argument I can see for trying to keep the Rift Herald, you know, summoning Daisy with the Rift Herald, going all in at mid lane when Bang or Huni shows, you know, in top lane or bottom lane or something, and Faker can't possibly hold it by himself, or blank's out of position. Really like the trade that they're doing onto Faker. Even if they don't kill him here, it's super fucking big, because again, Faker is the, you know, he's the, what's the saying? He's the thing that's I forgot the saying. He's the, I don't know, he's the stone that's holding it all together. He's you know, he's the nail that's holding it all together. And now they do end up getting the mid turret, and so objectively, not like objectively as in, you know, subjective or something, but I mean in an objective standpoint, getting that mid tier 1 turret out of the way is super big, because now this opens up Misfits to be able to have priority in this side of the jungle, and it enables them to control this area of the map, which is super big for Dragons and obviously super big for Baron. And then again, because of the Cataclysm on Jarvan and because of Orianna, it enables them to further control these choke points, and it really helps against the Talia, because it makes the funnel point for SK Telecom a lot more difficult. And because they're going to be the ones that are defending it while staying in the back, they're not really going to be tunneled up into the narrow corridors. It actually works against Jace, because it means that there's a wide arc for them to be standing in, and it makes it difficult for Huni to hit his acceleration gate shock blasts. And so now Misfits just moving around the map. I like that they're going for the Stranglehold. This is the same thing they did in game number 2. The Baron attempt is not sincere. It's just trying to entice SKT to try to come into the river. TSM is renowned for this, but Korean teams are often very practiced against this, and oftentimes don't take the bait. They understand the damage output that a team can have, but this is skewed a little bit by the fact that Misfits, their 80 carry, Giga-fed yet again with that Mountain Drake. Daisy not actually attacking the Baron. She's in love with the Baron. SK Telecom their hand is forced to come into the pit. Now, Misfits never need to actually take the Baron, But SK Telecom, because they don't have the resources available yet to them, they don't have, the amount of blue trinkets that they would obviously like. They don't have the luxury of having, Talia Wall double blue trinket available. They don't have any sort of wards in position that would let them have any sort of intel. They're forced to come into the river. And then it actually just looks like this is actually being really misplayed by Misfits. They seem like they're a little bit slow to turn. Obviously, Maxlor not controlling Daisy as best as he could have been. Maxlor should have been probably tanking the Baron this entire time, or Maxlor should have been out here with Power of Evil, and you just actually let Alfari, sorry, Jesus, I drew a line to Huni. You just let Alfari tank the Baron, and they don't actually end up getting blank. And so Maxlor mispositioning, or Maxlor and Power of Evil misplaying this Baron fight really poorly. And then SK Telecom gets a lot of breathing room, and this is something that you can't allow to happen, because we talked about the tempo and how they have the tempo advantage. And now they're raising, mid-turret. They're going to steal away the blue buff from Power of Evil, and that's really big because obviously Ivern wants to do it. Misfits saying, you know what? You're out of position. We're going to go for the Baron. They have that Mountain Drake. It's going to enable it. Blink now needs to be a hero, needs to try to steal, but you can see that Misfits misread the speed at which SK Telecom are actually able to arrive to the Baron, and now yet again, look at bottom wave. Atrocious for Misfits. Look at top wave. That's really good for Misfits. The problem is that they have to respond to it right now, which is exactly when SK Telecom want them to respond to it, so they get the bounce back, and now SK Telecom has option. Mid lane now going over to SKT, and this actually concedes their jungle yet again, and these are the type of things that can enable SK Telecom to actually propel themselves back into the game. Really unfortunate. So they're starting to follow power on a macro level, and this is actually oftentimes where Korean teams start to shine over Western teams, is because Western teams don't seem to value this stage of the game as much. Oftentimes when they get leads, they're not going to be facing opponents, or they're not going to be up against an opposition that is actually capable of resisting such leads and playing around it, doing the dance properly. Misfits now just going to go to Infernal Drake. They want to pick that up. Obviously, super, super, super strong. It's even amplified more so by the fact that Power of Evil has an on-hit build. So that physical damage that's going to be coming out of Orianna is also going to be amplified. Really, really, really good. Infernal Drake, super important for them. Leona obviously going to benefit from it a little bit as well, as she has that Fervor. Her auto attacks are actually going to hurt on some of the members of SK Telecom, so it's not even like she's losing value. The only one that you could really argue is losing value there is Maxlor. He's probably just getting a little bit of hit points on his shield that's going to be available to him. So that's okay. But obviously every other member of Misfits benefits from it heavily. Huni being a little bit out of position, they end up getting the flash out of him, and it comes at a really bad point. Now, for SK Telecom, though, they have a little bit of breathing room because the Cloud Drake, and now you can see that little bit of a misplay being made by Ignar. Wasn't expecting all of them there because they didn't have the vision inside of SKT's blue side jungle, and so this is that turtle stance that SK Telecom they can keep taking, and now they're only down 3,000 gold. The Infernal Drake, however, is playing a massive part because that's going to add a few grand to Misfits' total gold score. So even though they're scaling back in, and Faker has all of these kills right now, and he's a really problematic champion for Misfits because he's dealing all that magic damage. He has a lot of penetration. He's able to light up Hansama. He's able to light up Maxlor. Able to light up Ignar. Alfari, he has some magic resist, but not a ton. So even the HP that he has that's being granted by the Black Cleaver ties into Faker's Leandri's Torment. These are obviously super minuscule facts, but does end up playing a part. So SK Telecom, they're still really behind, but they're pulling it back. They're in a much closer spot than they were, and it's mostly because Misfits are moving around the map really poorly. They're not pincering SKT as well as they could. They're controlling. They're valuing the control of certain turrets more than they should, and so it's ending up costing them in this tempo war. And obviously, Ignar getting caught out there was super, super big. So now you can see Tier 1 ends up going down, and this is something that was going to occur anyway. So had Alfari just actually been at the Baron, if you get the teleport out of Huni and the Baron doesn't actually end up going that well, you can just actually recall and then make it down into bottom lane, eat all of that as your jungler and mid laner are likely to have to go onto the right-hand side of the map. So some macro error movements. Super big win for Misfits. Super, super, super big win. And they go teleport for teleport, but it didn't need to be teleport for teleport, and this is what I was trying to talk about earlier. Now the Cloud Drake though, that's gonna be a moment of that's gonna be a breath of fresh air though for SKT, because obviously if Misfits were to get a Infernal or if they were to get a Mountain Drake, it would be super terrible. Super God mode ultimate by Power of Evil. Huni goes in there, but obviously he doesn't have that much damage. Way too many shields coming out. So Jace pick not really dealing that much damage, and them getting caught into that position. Faker wasn't able to Faker SKT out of that situation. Don't think that Alphari should have just run down here. Obviously, he's not actually needed. They have to concede this turret anyway. He could have stayed up in top lane, and he could have just actually gone tit for tat with Huni. And this would have actually just enabled the other 4 members of Misfits to go down into the bottom lane. Really don't like Alphari's rotation right here. He's basically doing a type of rotation that he should have done earlier on in the game, but it's irrelevant to him doing it now because of the Baron enhanced minions and just because of how far ahead Misfits are currently in this game. So don't like the choice that he made. And you can see now he's just running back up to top lane. And this has now happened 3 times in the game where he's made an erroneous pathing mistake that ends up not creating enough value for his team. And it's giving SKT a lot of breathing room. And you can see that SKT, they want to pull the trigger. They don't need to pull the trigger. You can see Alphari now coming down. This is actually occurring at a really good spot because you can see the location of the minion wave up here. This means that this wave is actually in Misfits' favor, even without them making use of it. And now Alphari is in mid lane. All that Misfits had to do here was hold the line without actually enabling a fight to take place. And then you shove this wave in, and then you shove bottom in, and then you end up resetting, and you try to unite with this wave when it gets to around this point. You have 4 people go here, you have 1 person go up, and then you have 4 people shove in. You make your way through the blue side jungle, you get all the ward coverage, and then you siege as 5, you get the turret, you back up, you reset yet again. And then by the time this ends up resetting yet again, Baron is back onto the map. Baron's going to be coming back onto the map, and then Elder is becoming a real objective that SK Telecom has to worry about. And so then you just play for vision control while restricting vision out of SKT. Faker being a little bit too far forward. Did not need to be there. Because the minions are guaranteed to come into SKT anyway. There's no reason for them to be forward on the map because they already had control over the raid camp, which is all that they could realistically want or desire to try to kill. The only reason that I could see him maybe going up is if he actually has a recall for like Rabadon or Luden's Echo and he wanted to get it just by farming the wave and then backing up as fast as possible so he's back onto the map. That would have been a lot better. So, a little bit unfortunate. Misfits now split pushing. Baron coming up now in 50 seconds. Elder follows in a minute. Really, really good by Ignar, lighting up Wolf. Fucking approach of the second sun right there, holy shit. He cast it twice. Now Power of Evil shoving in the wave. This is fine because it comes into the point where they need to establish vision control. And they obviously want priority. It looks like they're choosing to actually have priority over the right-hand side jungle. This is a little bit interesting to me because even if SK... Alright, so this is a little bit bizarre. So if SK Telecom actually have Baron buff, backed up by the fact that Faker has the wave clear, and you have the Huni, and you just have the Gragas, you have the cast, etc., Misfits actually getting the Elder Dragon is worse than them getting the Baron. They should actually prioritize the Baron over the Elder Drake because of how much it means for SKT. They could have lost this game. If that steal doesn't happen, there's a very real chance that Misfits lose. So this steal is huge. Misfits shows a lack of understanding on what is the true priority right now. SK Telecom obviously go for a really brilliant sneak, or trying to attempt the sneak. Even if 2 of their members die, it's completely okay. You can actually give up the Elder to Misfits, and it's going to be completely okay because you're able to skew the minion waves, and you're able to make it so that Misfits can't make use of the Elder Baron, and then you've successfully denied the Elder Baron. At least until the next Baron comes up, and that would be at a point, we're talking, 42, 43, 44 minutes when the dance is going to take place, when SK Telecom's team composition is going to be more online than Misfits, and Faker and Bang should, in theory, be able to take over the game. So, the steal by Maxlore is gigantic. It single-handedly wins them the game. Because if they just live here, Faker, you can see Faker, Bang, Wolf, etc., they all just live. I can't actually tell. If Faker has the enhanced recall timer, does he make it out? That's something that... No, he probably doesn't make it out, actually. But... Let's see. If they had Baron, let's look at how Bang would maybe move. Bang gets knocked over. I'm pretty sure Bang runs to mid, pushes this wave, so there's no wave to use. Okay? And then Bang runs through his jungle, runs to bottom, pushes the wave. Misfits runs to Elder, they get Elder. Faker ends up dying, but the death timer isn't high enough, and Misfits has no minions to make use of because top is in too ugly of a position. I think also if Faker had Baron buff and he knew that he would die, his correct play would be to run up to top lane and then use the Q, use W, use E on the minions, and then ride the minions straight into the turret. That gives Bang enough time to have E in the minion wave, run down into bottom, shove this wave, shove one more wave out, eat the golems, get a recall off, and then by the time Faker ends up going down, the next minion waves are, they're going to be around here. And then what ends up occurring is that Misfits can't make use of the waves before Gragas and Huni and co are going to be back up. Bang's going to recall. He has the Baron enhanced minions. You tap them at the correct time, and it doesn't matter if Misfits actually has Elder Drake, so it doesn't really matter that much. Misfits now with Elder, with Baron. They're trying to get into the base. Faker casts the Weaver's Wall, and you can see that top lane is super good for them. Bottom lane, though, I think that they're being a little bit greedy. They should have probably just actually had Alphari teleport down into bottom, and the reason that I say teleport is because there's no other situation where the teleport is going to be useful for the next 6 minutes or so, because Baron's not available. You're not going to be split pushing instead of just being in position when Baron comes up, because that's going to be way too slow of an activation for your team composition versus SK Telecom's. And so I think that he should have just actually TP'd down into bottom on the minions. Had this wave be shoved in, Alphari shoves this in, giant wave up in top, you dance for 2 minion waves, and then this wave comes online that you can then make use of it, and you have a 3-pronged attack. Yeah, this is probably nerves getting to Misfits. This isn't the best play. They're going for a coin flip. Even if they lose, it doesn't mean that they lose the game, but it does mean that they get into another coin flip. I shouldn't say coin flip. This is still a high chance to get the turret and to get the inhibitor, but it's the highest chance SK Telecom can hope to have when trying to battle back against Misfits. So apparently it is 10 minutes until RNG versus Fnatic goes live. Faker, just a little bit out of position, gets gutted. This means that Misfits now can capitalize, eat that. And then you see, this is something that would have happened earlier, but it's occurring at, for the most part, the same time. They could have done it a little bit cleaner so that there wasn't as much of a high variance play, or so that it was less variance in mid lane. Ultimately, they end up achieving the same thing. Weaver's Wall trying to zone out Misfits before they can get to the wave, so that they're able to shove the wave. And fortunately, by Faker, that actually does enable them to survive for the moment, but probably not going to really matter too much. Misfits can just actually summon Daisy. They can fucking approach the second sun. They can call that down to the right of the turret, and then they can just look to raise the turret, given the fact that they have the Mountain Drake, they have the Tristan. It doesn't matter. They're using the go button. SKT obviously do not have the firepower needed to survive this push. They needed basically to live for just another 5-6 minutes, and then they could have been in a position to actually start to take fights elsewhere on the map. And that's going to end up being the game. So Misfits go up 2-1. I like, oh wow, that's Swallow. That, just watch Bang. Really weird. Looks nervous. That gulp. Okay, so now that is it for game number 3. We got 10 minutes